So thank you. Let me now introduce the Austrian Minister for Agriculture, Forestry, Environment and Water Management, Andrä Rupprechter, who I heard before we entered the room was once campaigning against nuclear power, was campaigning against regulating the beautiful Donau, where EEB now is staying. So we have an environmentalist coming up on stage. Please welcome him with an applaud.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the kind introduction, dear President Meyer, dear Franz, Jeremy. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here in Vienna, and it is with great pleasure for us to host this annual conference here in Vienna. And I heard and I learned that it's for the first time since long that the annual conference of the European Environment Bureau is held outside Brussels. So we are really glad and happy that you choose Vienna for this conference, for the annual conference. You are staying in the Hainburger Au, which is, as you mentioned, part of my environmentalist engagement. This actually started when I was in the age of 11 years as a pupil in 1972, I think it was, when I was campaigning against a hydropower plant in my home village in the Brandenberger Ache. The fight against the hydropower plant there in the Brandenberger Ache was, I think, the first really known environment campaign against such an installation. It continued in the age, still as a pupil, in the year 78, when we had our anti-nuclear campaign, the referendum against Zwentendorf, when we decided to construct a nuclear plant, and then the people decided with a broad majority against the use of nuclear power. And I think it was a wise decision. And then as a student in 84, I was campaigning together with a lot of people from the Austrian side here against a huge hydropower plant in the Danube in the Hainburger Au, which is a national park today. At this time, I was a student's representative, and I asked one of my predecessors, the Minister for Water, Mr. Hayden, to resign, which he did, not because I asked him, but a few weeks later. Now let us start to the theme, the motto of your conference. And I would like to start with the encyclica Laudato Si of Pope Francis. In his groundbreaking encyclica, he speaks of the fragility of our planet. And indeed, I think we all agree with this analysis. Environmental impacts do not respect national borders. Responsible environment policy aims to hand our natural heritage over to future generations. This is the only sustainable economy and a society based on greater solidarity. The motto, the theme of this year's conference, From Sustainability Talk to Policy Walk, Stepping Up EU Action on Climate, Biodiversity and Circular Economy, addresses the key challenges and environmental issues, not only for the Europeans, but also for the global community. Both the Paris Climate Agreement and the commitment to the overarching Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, agreed at the UN Assembly in September last year, can only be achieved with a common effort by all, industrialized and non-industrialized countries, policymakers, the business community, farmers, NGOs, and the civil society as a whole. More efforts must now be put into implementation. I am fully supportive to a swift ratification of the Paris Agreement by the EU and its member states in the run-up to the COP22 in Marrakesh. I'm happy to say that the Austrians completed already its national ratification process mid-August as the third EU member state this summer. And when we hear now that India has agreed to ratify the Paris Agreement at the 2nd of October, this agreement will be soon in place and soon in force. And therefore, I think it's necessary also to take the necessary steps from side of the European Union. And by an extraordinary meeting of the Environment Ministers' Council at the end of this month, so this week, I think we will move towards an agreement in this way. Sustainability now. This was the report of the former Director General Karl Falkenberg. He asks for commitment on the highest political level. Like the European Parliament, he argues in favor of a European Sustainable Development Strategy. I fully support this ambition, and I have talked to the responsible Vice President a year ago about the implementation of such a policy. And I think I got some understanding for it, but not yet agreement. The two agreements, the Paris Agreement and the SDGs, should become the backbone, as you said, Michael, of a new EU vision of positive, transformative change of the EU 28, 27, however you want to see it, respecting our planet's ecological limits. We should now move to this agenda forward, linking it to our forthcoming presidency in 2018, and we will try to make it a strong commitment of the trio presidency together with Estonia and Bulgaria for this next period. Concerning the circular economy, the proposed package makes an essential contribution towards a green future. Waste is not garbage. An ambitious circular economy building on long-term life cycle thinking, avoiding waste, and ensuring the best possible use of resources is beneficial for the environment, the economy, and above all, for our citizens. As an overall goal, it will be important to incorporate EU-wide binding and clear provisions in the area of waste management to stimulate new markets, such as business models based on selling services instead of selling products, or to promote the sharing and transfer of knowledge, experience, and good practices. Changes in values, consumer behavior, and lifestyle are leading to a fundamental reorientation and reparability. Ban of disposal, packaging, and reuse of products is also supported by the circular economy package. Concerning biodiversity, it's easy to talk about it when living in a country like Austria. We are rich in species, ecosystems, in diversity of landscapes. Nearly 30% of our territory is under various degrees of protection. Biodiversity is the basis for our living and welfare, our life insurance. I am fully committed to achieving our national targets on biodiversity included in the Austrian 2020 biodiversity strategy. Our national biodiversity campaign, Vielfalt leben, is a flagship project and can thus serve as a model for other EU member states. It is also an outstanding example of joint efforts between NGOs and other stakeholders. Agriculture is an important part of any solution to safeguard biodiversity. We are proud to rank first in the European Union with our 20% share of organic farming. The Austrian Agri-Environment Programme includes targets for the protection and enhancement of biological diversity. Let me also address another important topic, bioenergy. Bioenergy is currently delivering more than 60% of all renewable sources consumed in Europe. Sustainability is the key for bioenergy development. This renewable energy source will continue to play a central role in decarbonizing the European economy. Bioenergy is delivered by local communities for local use. Only 4% of total EU bioenergy consumed in Europe is imported. In comparison, we are importing 45% of our coal and 90% of our oil. There is ample evidence that the local use of wood is of significant environmental and climate benefit. It's also of considerable importance for the development of rural economies and thus also linked to social and economic sustainability. We have to take this into consideration when we discuss energy turnaround. We are proposing a treaty for the Energiewende, the energy turnaround in Europe, to more use the renewables, as well as a new wide harmonized CO2 tax. Energy turnaround must be based on sustainable sources. And to be very clear, nuclear energy is not seen as a sustainable energy source because it's a high-risk technology and a high-cost technology. Of course, a new harmonized policy on sustainable needs to take into account the existing national policies on sustainable forest management is another important step in the context of Energiewende. Ladies and gentlemen, let me wish you all the best for your deliberations today. Our responsibility for Europe's environment and for the state in which we want to hand it over to future generations is a joint one. Finally, I would like to thank the whole staff of the Austrian Museum of Applied Arts making this event possible in the wonderful premises, and I wish you full success of your annual conference. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Minister, for your speech. We have time now for some questions and answers. And we have a microphone. Yes, and please also introduce yourself. Yes.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, I talked to Vice President Timmermans. Now I found his name again. Mr. Timmermans, after we have agreed on the SDG last year, we had a meeting with the Vice President because he is responsible for the coordination of the different strategies. And we asked him to come forward with a proposal to how to implement the strategy, the SDGs in the EU agenda. He was a bit not too much convinced at that moment. I think that it's reasonable to now change the Agenda 2020 towards embedding the Agenda 2030 goals. But I think it's from outstanding importance, and certainly we will make it in the context of our presidency, and in the trio presidency we will have a coordination meeting in due time with the Estonians and Bulgarians in the Environment Council, at least, to focus on the implementation of the SDG and developing of a European Agenda 2030.
Thank you very much. It's nice. I see very many hands. We will not have time to right now for all the questions, but I think Petruta from Romania.
Yes, thank you. I'm Petruța Moisi from Eco Counseling Center, Romania. And I would very much like to thank the Austrian government and appreciate the Austrian legislation, who proved extremely supportive to Romanian NGOs in their battle against the illegal logging and Holz Industries, Scheichhofer, sorry about pronunciation, which damaged large areas, forest areas in Romania, have been brought to justice here in Austria. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
I think it was not a question.
for that comment. We have a question here.
Yeah, my name is Volker Maufer, University of Vienna. Mr. Minister, you mentioned that you're Minister for Agriculture, Forestry, also water management and environment. And we see more and more also conflicts of interest between, for example, bioenergy, hydropower, and the last remaining fields of environment, rivers. Could you explain us how you, in your personal work, deal with those conflicts of interest, especially agriculture, forestry, and environmental issues, in order to perhaps give the audience some ideas to learn from you? Thank you.
I actually don't feel too many of these conflicts of interest. As I mentioned, the Austrian agriculture sector is by far the most how to call it CO2 positive decarbonized sector. We can call to the European Joint Research Institute, which showed that the emissions of CO2 from the agriculture sector is the lowest compared with all EU member states, and that has a reason. When we had our accession to the European Union in 1995, together with our Swedish and Finnish colleagues, it was one of the strategies to strengthen this ecologization of the agriculture sector by introducing an agri-environment program, a very comprehensive program, to support farmers to introduce techniques which are agri-environmentally friendly production methods, like the reduction of the use of pesticides and so on. Organic farming was a key focus. So we had more than 80% of our utilized agricultural land is under management schemes and contracts lasting at least 5 years, following these methods. The agri-environment programs are now in part of the rural development programs, and after 20 years we can also really focus on a very long-standing research, ex-ante and ex-post evaluation of the impact of these programs, and they are really positive. So this is also the reason why we got our new rural development program in December 2014, together with some new measures like climate active measures, like measures for natural protection and so on, which we introduced after very comprehensive negotiations with the DG Envy, which was involved in the approving of the program. So I think in the agriculture sector, this conflict of interest, which in principle may exist between environment and agriculture, I think we overcame this by introducing this, what we called, and it's existing now in Austria since nearly 30 years, ökosoziale Agrarpolitik.
Just to give you one comment, I'm not in a position to comment about the Austrian situation, but on the one hand, with such a portfolio in a government or within the commission or something, you might balance so that environment lose in this balancing exercise. On the other hand, as I also mentioned before in my introduction, we need comprehensive and coherent policies which might make it difficult to have just an environmental department. But I think that my experience is that the big division is rather between sectoral ministries and often finance ministries, where finance ministries often ask for a kind of proof of evidence in a cost-benefit analysis exercise, where environment, unless you have stringent policies to promote good decision making, is often losing ground due to the problems with monitorizing, etc. So, but it's a very important question to discuss in various settings. I see numerous hands, but we only have time for one more question, and that goes to the one with the microphone, which is a tractor from Ireland.
Thank you very much. Minister, thank you very much for your inspirational remarks. My name is Andrä Vryn. I'm from an Irish NGO, the Irish Environmental Network in Don Taishca, and it was truly wonderful and inspirational to hear a minister speak to his own personal environmental crusades and campaigning. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Austrian government for its leadership role in relation to the state aid issue and the transboundary issues, particularly in relation to Hinkley Point. Of course, Austria was critical to the ESPO Implementation Committee's decision on the UK's failure to comply with that Convention on Transboundary Impacts. And we now have a very important finding and recommendation from the committee, which will go to the meeting of the parties in June next year. In the lead up to that, there is likely to be intense pressure to reduce the strength of that recommendation. And I would ask you for some guidance and some words of encouragement to us on what we can and should be doing in the lead up to that, to make sure that that important recommendation, which Austria's role was so fundamental in, to make sure that that is maintained and is a strong recommendation. And thank you again, sincerely.
Yes, I think Hinkley Point C stands for some sort of a renaissance of nuclear power in Europe. We were, after 5 years after Fukushima, we thought the Energiewende has started, but now some governments in Europe use the Paris Agreement for some sort of a renaissance of nuclear energy. And I think this is the wrong way. As I said, nuclear energy, from our point of view, in Chernobyl proves it, several other accidents, and the last one, Fukushima, proves it. It's a high-risk technology, which and the cost goes over more than one generation with all the nuclear waste. So it's anything else than a sustainable energy source. And to make that clear, that was also the decision of our government to fight against the decision of the Commission to approve it was the old Commission, it was the Barroso Commission who approved in one of its last meetings the Hinkley Point C decision. We went to the court, we have partners in this. Luxembourg joined in as a state, and some other important organizations stepped in. And it's not decided yet, yeah. And also the Brexit doesn't change anything. It will be, if there is a decision on this, a decision of the court on this, it will be also part of the exit negotiations, yeah.
I think it's that's an excellent comment, and I think we can't stop at any better point in time than with this firm stance against a clearly non-renewable, dangerous energy source. So let us thank the Minister with an applaud.